Are you seriously going to eat, you fat blibbity blabbity blob? I mean,
It's
some of you might be like,
continual.
why would I want to start this?
Sensitive. She's sensitive. She's
You are listening to the Tammy Talks Unscripted Healing Podcast, where we share stories that are, you guessed it, unscripted.
That's the thing, this journey doesn't stop.
It doesn't really
right?
end. We have a general sense of the topic each episode, but really the whole point is just to show up and be authentic and let our inner child speak its truth. And I have continued to work through that story of constantly hearing, well, we don't want, got a hot dog on our hands. Yeah, guess what, Mr. Sabatsky, you do. So I'm so excited that you are here, and it is my hope that you hear yourself somewhere in the story so that way you can feel seen and heard as well. So let's start talking. Here we go. All right. Welcome to the Tammy Talks Unscripted Healing Podcast. I am so excited for the guest today, and it's one of those fun little things that a listener was like, you should have her on here. And then I heard a little bit about your story. I'm like, I need to get her on here. And then we've just kind of been like telepathically connecting. And then I put the post out there about Talerian being a partner of the Tammy Talks podcast, and you responded on that post. And I was like, girl, I've been meaning to reach out to you. I don't know if you've been getting the messages, but that connected us, hopped on Zoom, and here is Katie to share her. I don't even know how to like summarize your story because it's all the things, it's all the feels. And I know this much of it because I told her again, I'm like, I want to know about it, but I don't want to know about it because I really do want these episodes to be very unscripted. And we were just talking earlier, right before I hit record, about worrying if we go off on tangents. And I was like, girl, you are on the right podcast because that's what we do here.
Let's go.
Welcome, Katie. And I guess I will share a little bit how I first knew of you was at our mutual friend Colleen's wedding. And oh my goodness, what a beautiful wedding.
Gorgeous day. They asked me to officiate the wedding, and
Yeah.
It was such an amazing honor to be able to officiate a wedding in general, but especially of two people I love so much. And so she really gave me free reign to just come up with, like, speak from the heart and come up with the whole service. And I just couldn't believe I was trusted. Again, once you hear my story and understand, it was a very full circle moment. And again, probably one of the coolest things I've ever done. So
It just gave me all the feels about the trust. I never really made that connection, but you're absolutely right. From where you were.
Neither of them wanted to hear it before the day too. I've ruined more weddings or been not ruined. I've been a unproductive part of more weddings than I've been a helpful part of in the past. And for people I loved, you know, so It was just crazy. I'm like, you guys don't want to hear what I wrote? They're like, no, surprise us. And so that amount of trust just blew my mind.
I love this story even more now knowing that, because I thought it was cool as shit before, thinking they just have this friend who they love and honor so much, and trusted with their ceremony, but not to the depths that you interpret that as. But what I loved about that whole thing was, I don't even know how to describe it because I didn't know you at all. That was the first time I've ever seen you, experienced you, but I would have thought you have done a million weddings. You owned that. And the energy that you exuded and the confidence that you exuded, to me, without knowing you, like, this is her in her element, in her highest self, channeling all of her goodness. And I had no idea what your story was. No idea. And that's why I love being able to share people's story, because wow, to see that version of you, I would have never fully appreciated where you were in that moment, standing up there, marrying these two people, knowing the journey that you have been on yourself, to come into union with yourself. Like, holy crap, is such a beautiful thing. So, I'm so glad I didn't know that before.
No, thank you so much for saying that, because I genuinely, I don't think that they knew what it meant to me. They were just like, we love you and we trust you and you're the right person. And that felt amazing. But that day, I agree and relate to, we talk about learning how to be our best selves. And I just have never felt more in flow and in the right place. And in the moments of just being able to stand there and create levity, but also authenticity. And, it was just like, I love them both so much. I watched their journey from a space that really, it was so, so cool. Like I said, one of the coolest things I've ever done. And so again, I'm so grateful I got to do it, but to be recognized in that way. And then the number of people that came up to me after, like, I don't know that I could do another wedding justice like that, right? Like maybe not, but like for me it was all about like right place, right time. They were such a part of my journey, and I got to be a part of theirs in that capacity. I could have spoke forever up there, but I wanted to keep it short and sweet, and it was the first time I think I actually nailed that in a way that still gave all the value and everything. So I'm like, I wrote 100 different versions and then none and got blocked, but like what came out was so perfect. And then everybody else, like whether it was the vows or the speeches, they all just played off and complimented each other. It was truly one of the most surrendered opportunities to just be like, speak through me, God, right? Tell me what needs to be said and what doesn't. And it was just so clear. And I was literally writing it, kind of the final touches to it that morning, because I was like, where are we at? And so I said there probably hasn't been another moment in life that has felt so right where I'm supposed to be. So thank you so much for saying
this is why you're the perfect guest for this podcast, because that's what it is all about. It's just being in flow and letting whatever comes out come out, and just being you and shining your light, and just not having to feel like I have to put on this mask and worry about what everyone's going to think about what I'm going to say. I'm just going to be up here. I'm going to be me, and I'm going to let it flow through, because I trust in myself now, in my journey now, and God now. Like, and
it's such a practice in life, right?
But
like it's such a practice. And even the way I opened, I can't even remember word for word, but I think it was something like, we're gathered here today to witness the debut of my officiating career.
Yeah.
Like I was like, I thought it was gonna be funny, but then I'm like, you don't know family members. Is everybody gonna find that funny? I don't know. Right, but it was such a great introduction. Again, like I said, bring some levity to it, and they laughed with me, and so I was really grateful that worked. I was up there though when I walked up. I'm like, am I going to do that? Maybe I cut it out. Maybe I don't.
You just went with it. You just trusted, and sure enough,
it was like, yes. From there, it was like, I just trust wherever this takes us. Let's go.
Yes. Well, let's do that same thing here. We're just going to trust that whatever comes out in this episode comes out, and people are going to get what they need out of it, and just by you being you, that is the gift. So you don't have to worry about saying the perfect things or making sure they get this little nugget. Like, you being you, that is the light for people.
Well, thank you.
Right? Just you being here and sharing your story is a gift, and people are absolutely going to get something out of just experiencing you and your energy, just like all of us did at that wedding.
All
right. Let's officially get it started. So speaking of this journey, holy buckets, is you have been on a journey. And so let's start with kind of where you are now, what you're doing now, because you up and moved to Texas, trusted that part of your journey. And then we'll kind of work backwards a little bit. But let's start with where you are now and what you're doing now.
All right. Yeah. So today I work, I guess basically the quick and short of like where I'm at today is that I just recently celebrated 5 years sober from all substances. And when I found, yes, thank you. It was a journey to get there too, for sure. But when I had the opportunity to move for a job in recovery, it just kind of felt like the right timing. And so it was just one of those things that it was like, I just had to trust the timing of it all. I currently work at a treatment center called Positive Recovery Centers in Houston. They have a couple different locations and throughout the Texas area, but it's where I went to treatment. It's where I got sober. It's the leadership team who helped save my life. And so again, when there was an opportunity to come and be a part of, and then not only that, but like the role that they were looking to fill was outcome studies and follow up, but it's also the alumni support. And for me, it just felt like a calling. Like, we don't just get sober to be sober and white knuckle it, right? To be able to find meaning in our lives and work towards building lives that we really want to live and thrive in recovery. So it was just interesting because prior to moving, it was something I was kind of already doing through different service projects and different programs I was working with and doing it kind of for free for volunteer work. So to think about being able to do that in a more meaningful way, right? To help more people and be a part of something bigger. You know, I love Madison so much. It's the only home I've ever known prior to moving here, really. And it is, you know, the city that made me. But again, like it's smaller than Houston. And so the excitement around the opportunity to come and affect more lives, learn more from other people and new industries and ways that things are being done down here was really exciting. So I've been in Houston about actually my 2-year anniversary was just like 2 days ago. So it's been 2 years now.
I love that. And I love that what you're doing now enables you to utilize your gifts that, from my perspective, we're able to find through recovery. Like, oh, look at under all of this, here I am. All of these beautiful aspects of me that I was maybe trying to cover up and numb, or, you know, because of childhood things or whatever, when we try to dull or mask or dim our light, or really your gifts this whole time, and how you're able to help people to be able to find that through recovery. So you're giving, right? You're now giving these gifts. You were doing it before and volunteer and for free. But God's like, hold up. There's this thing called giving and receiving, and we need to balance that out. And so here's a job where you can really impact on a different level, impact more, but also allow yourself to receive, because you are also worthy of receiving. And I think that's where a lot of times we get caught up.
It's the hard part sometimes, you know?
Yeah. Is that you are worthy of that too. The same love and care and attention and all of those things. But yeah, we often deny ourselves of the receiving part, because that worthiness wound is oftentimes still there. And that's part of healing, part of recovering, part of all of it. Right. So let's go back then. Let's start with the story so we can start to piece some of it together of where we got to and why. So people can see that, because I want people to be able to look at their own story and start maybe connecting some of those dots. So
yeah. No, so I grew up in Madison. My mother and father were never together. So again, I didn't have, a typical household in that sense, but they both lived in Madison. Again, I saw my dad on holidays and other sporadic times throughout the year. So he was in my life, but just not as a constant, everyday force. But I had 2 different stepdads. Again, my mom was somebody who, again, got really sick at some point. She was probably, I heard, and again, I hear stories about when I was born, she was in the hospital for almost a year. So there was some illness there. And again, then it started to progress throughout my life. I think it really kicked off and started. My sister is 5 years younger than me. And when my mom was pregnant with her, I guess that's where my memories of her being sick start, because again, the pregnancies just weren't good for her. And so we had nurses in and out of our house and things like that. Again, I think, watching somebody that you love be sick is tough. And so that is a huge part of my childhood. I think also, I don't know, my grandmother, my mom's mom, and I guess both grandparents were in my life and were very helpful. But my mom's mom particularly was very Catholic. And so I grew up and was, Sunday at church with grandma or Nana. And I did that for some years, and life was somewhat stable but unstable. And so again, there was just a lot of inconsistency, I guess I would say. But it was pretty good until around the time I was 10. So my dad owns a bar since I was born. Shout out to Players in Madison, Wisconsin. Home of the best burgers. But then my mom also purchased a bar up in Poinet. And so I grew up, Friday night fish fries was my first job and working. But then at some point, my mom got diagnosed with diabetes. And so again, some more of that illness and some of that frustration, I think, started when I was young. And so again, I don't really know where to stop or start here. So again, tell me if I'm I
have things that I'm I want to chime in about, but you keep going.
I was gonna say I could dive in a few different directions, but I think that with my mom getting sick, there was a lot of inner turmoil and anger from my end, because it was just not knowing where to put some of the anger of like, well, nobody's showing up to my concerts or dance recitals or basketball games or anything. So I really didn't end up engaging in much for sports or anything else. You know, it was always a you should do this, but there wasn't a whole lot of support to make it happen. And so again, I just remember being the third wheel a lot with other families, which thank God, right? I'm so grateful for the others who just kind of adopted me when they could and things like that. But I think that starts to like wear. And again, I started to recognize where I felt like, you know, people who had more of a, I don't know, mom and dad in the home compared to not, and the ability to like get picked up on time and whatever. It's like all of that started to affect and impact. And so I feel like I started to relate to people with more broken homes than I did to people who had a family unit. And I don't know that that's to say that they were better, worse, or whatever, but I am just going to say that I do recognize that into middle school that really started.
To see it like, wait a second.
Yeah. Well, and even I think even younger too, I don't think anybody ever said, oh, you're a burden, or said those words, but just again, the taking care of certain things did always feel like somewhere in me that just got taken on, right? So again, my wants and needs were inconvenient for others, you know, and so that sucks, because that's something I'm working at this point to still kind of work through, right? You know?
And every morning asks me, like, how are you a blessing and not a burden? Because he knows that I'm still working through that one. And again, it was never said you're a burden or whatever. It was just, I didn't want to be a burden because I saw how stressed they were, how hard they were trying. And so I created a story. My ego created a story about how I was a burden, wherein you might have felt that in different ways. But yeah, ego latches onto that story. You feel a burden, and here you are as an adult, like, damn, still working through that.
Yep. So there's awareness now, right?
Yeah, at least we have that.
and we're apparently reworking the muscle, right?
Yeah, we are.
And again, I realized how much that was a story that I learned to tell myself, because again, I think the stark difference for me was that my mom was so loving, like outwardly loving. And again, when I'm with my dad, it's like, oh, it wasn't for a lack of their effort to show it, right? My grandparents put me on a pedestal. Like I was very loved, right? But it just also, when there was needs or everyday things, it just, it felt very different at times. And so again, that's stuff that, like I said, being worked through. And I think there was also just like now looking back, because grief is a huge part of my story as we get into, you know, teenage years and later years. But my mom lost her best friend in a plane accident. I want to say 95 or 96. So I was 5 or 6 years old. And then right after that, my grandfather passed. And so these are things that, like, you know, my mom's 25 with 2 kids and losing people that she loves that are her like right-hand people. And now putting that into perspective, like,
yes,
it just, I'm like, oh man, I know what grief feels like now. And I just wish, I don't know, I guess I wish there would have been more conversation or understanding of what that was happening, you know, in my life.
Not just for her, but for you too.
Right.
One, you can see the shifts in her because she's grieving and maybe didn't have healthy outlets for that, or even an outlet for that, because you're a mom of 2 kids at 25. Like, do you even have time to do that and have time to grieve? But yet as a kid, you're seeing a shift in your mom and not maybe understanding why, because you're 5 and you shouldn't have to understand that. So again, your ego can start to create stories of worthiness, of not worthy of her time or attention or energy, when really, like, she's just trying to get through her day because this grief is unbearable. But it's, I feel so much of that. And it's interesting as you're talking about this, it feels like that emotional abandonment seems to be a theme, or in some cases, maybe actual, like you said, like some of the daily things that maybe needed. But I think about that when you were a baby and when she was sick. Mm-hmm. When we think energetically, there is a bond that forms, and we all know that, but I'm like, even in the womb, right? That can happen. We create this energetic attachment, but then to be sick for a year, like, one, physically being able to truly attach, but also emotionally, And as a baby, you want that, you need that, you crave that. Your intuition is telling you that, hey, when I cry, I should receive something. But if she's sick and can't get up or whatever, you can see how there is this abandonment wound can start so early and how that just kept getting replayed over and over again. And even in this
case, I think
what
I relate to too is like I probably had an abundance, right? My Nana was right at the time, my grandparents, my dad, like, the people who loved me so big in these younger years too. And then when she got sick, it just felt so opposite of what I was used to, right? And so again, I think as I was getting older and these things were happening, that abandonment just feeling like the love never was lost, and I am so full of love to give and love to receive, but it definitely created an anger within me that I didn't know what to do with when things weren't like that. So
well, and then there's this guilt of like, well, I shouldn't feel angry because you can see the circumstances and understand it. So then really feel like I should have this. So we find ways to numb it, to suppress it, to whatever, and it's still there.
It's very well, and that kind of moves into what the next decade of life looked like, where it was looking for love in all the wrong places and attention and affection in really unhealthy relationships. I mean, whether that's from romantic or the friendships that I kept. I was somebody who was, I think, by 12 to 13 having sex already and finding myself in a relationship. And when I think of that, it makes me so sick when I look at my nieces and nephews and I'm like, 12 or 13, like what the hell is wrong? I don't know. I like to tell myself it was a different world back then, but
it was, and right.
Right. And but it's still just like crazy. And so again, it just what in me needed that so much then, and then was willing to put up such a fight. So again, I definitely started my tear of rebellion very young. And started playing around with smoking weed and drinking also very young, 10 to 12 was where, just playfully began, right? But the story progresses into a pretty gnarly addiction. So
and I know that I might phrase things differently than the language might be in the recovery world. When I think of or even speak about ego, I think of it as your inner child's protector. That's its main goal, its sole focus is protection. But when we see the things that it does in the name of protection, like, what are you doing? It's like, well, you want love. Let's go receive love. This feels like love. This looks like love. And inside you're like, no, it isn't. This is toxic as fuck. No. But like any resemblance of it, it'll just take whatever it can get, right? Because it's trying to meet that need. And so it has the purest intentions, but yeah, you're right. It takes us down this path of like, well, you don't want to feel this. You don't want to experience that or whatever it is. And so learning it that way or interpreting it that way has just given me such a different perspective of the struggles that we face. Like for me, it was food. And now I understand like why I would binge eat despite having a master's degree in nutrition. I can see it differently. And I haven't had the struggles that you have. So it's like, it's hard to relate to that, but I can understand why ego would have gone to the lengths that did to protect little Katie and why that can be so strong. But I don't necessarily, from your perspective, how do you see that or how do you explain that to people when you look at these choices that you made, which I would be like, I think as ego has done that.
Loaded.
Right.
I think, like you said, a lot of that, I just think my need for instant gratification became so present in my life because I just wanted to solve whatever pain or hurt or whatever I was feeling, And so it looked like anything that could change my mood. And it started with the relationships. It started with being led astray, in spaces I had no business being in, right? Like I'm just trying to choose my words a little bit wisely. But again, like I was hanging out with much older people when I was very young and doing things that I just had no business doing. And so again, but what in me needed that as I start and look at the patterns, again, it was always something, and there was always like a high level of self-sabotage happening, right?
Oh,
Like
yeah.
as soon as good things would start to happen, like I would blow them up without even being aware. So I mean, again, I just think the examples start so early on for that. And so when you say like ego was just trying to protect, I definitely believe that. But then, it's so interesting how that's the same thing that was like pushing everybody that was loving me and trying to take care of me or give me any solid advice away.
Right. Right. Because if we let them in too close and I actually allow them to love me and I love them back, and what happens if they're gone? What if they leave? That would hurt way more. So why don't I push them away now so I don't ever have to worry about that? And in the meantime, here you are feeling alone and isolated when really that connection was the actual thing that we wanted. But that's where he was like, yeah, but what if you lost it? Like, but what if I didn't lose it?
And definitely, like again, not wanting to be abandoned anymore or to be hurt in those ways or to be seen even. Like I just never understood. And I'm so grateful for the way things are shifting. So that way we can talk about what vulnerability looks like. Because I think this generation is so different and so lucky in the sense that we have the ability to call it what some of that is. I mean, the armor, I'm a big fan of Brene Brown, but just that armoring up that I learned to do so young. And then again, just recognizing too that, like you said, whether my mom was sick or whatever, God, our parents do the best they can or the best they know how to do with what they have. And I'm so grateful to have done the work to recognize that I'm so blessed to be the best versions of my mom and my dad mixed, right? To get the empathy and the love and the softness and the excitement that my mom would bring, and then also the boldness and the life that my dad does. Like it's an amazing mix to be able to recognize my own strengths and feel that within me and know what it's all for and take the accountability now, because for so long it was like, but you didn't do this and they didn't do that and you guys fucked me up. I'll never forgive you for all the things I didn't get. But like, I don't think there's a way to ever do it without having some kind of things that were missed. And so at the end of the day, like I said, my ego kept me so angry for so long. And I'm just so exhausted with being so angry. And so I think vulnerability just becomes what I need to have. But I needed safe spaces to do that before I could. And so I'm just like, again, grateful isn't a big enough word for how I feel about the people that just allowed me to bring my walls down, right? And those examples, because it's not everybody in your life. And throughout my life, I've always had different people that have shown up and given me space to just bring the walls down, take the armor off, and remember who little Katie is, or so again, it's like whether or not that's what I was calling it, or whether or not I realized like that I was bringing myself back to that version of myself. I think it is so parallel whether or not I called it what you call it today or what I'm learning to call it, right? But it's really cool to see some of that uncovering and then recognize where I can take my power back.
Yes. Ooh. Well, I love that you mentioned the two aspects from your parents, because in both of those could be seen as things that maybe at some point you had to hide, like the softness, the empathy, but also the boldness. Those are both things that could be considered too much. You're too sensitive or you're too bold. So you try to find this place in the middle that feels safe for everybody else, when really you just kind of become a shell of who you really are. And what I witnessed at that wedding was full spectrum emotion and boldness. And it was all of it. And it was like this beautiful stew of authenticity. And we think like, man, if I was masking those or dulling those or dimming those, I was doing not only myself a disservice, but everyone, because you gave so many people a gift in being who you were that day. And I think if we can remember that, sometimes like we do people a disservice by not operating our gifts, by not being who we are, by not shining our light, even if it may seem too much for some people. They just aren't your people.
Well, that's just it. Like I've always resonated with that. And again, you're always trying to conform to fit into a box that like, if it's not your box to fit in, what the hell are you doing? And so again, as soon as I started to recognize, like I remember shortly after getting sober, somebody just saying like, God, you're such a light in this space. And, that really just sat with me in a way that was like, fuck, I know that, I know that I can.
I know that to be true.
Right, right. Hold on. I gotta like dig to remember that and believe it and then allow that compliment. But my energy has the ability to change the room, and for better or for worse, I get to. And so I get to choose how I show up and affect others. And why in the hell would I ever choose anything other than love and light in these spaces? Especially, there's enough hurt people and brokenness in this world. And so that's another space where it's like we talk about the wedding and just feeling so aligned in that moment. And you're so right, because it was that perfect meshing of being able and willing to be loud and funny to me. I don't care if it's funny to everybody, because it's funny to the two people I'm here to do service to. I'm also here to be authentic and loving and dig deep and have feelings. And if I cry up there, whatever. And so I try to do that today in the work that I do with the people that I meet who are working through their own things. And, I know healing is a journey and it always looks different, but golly, does my unarmored self sees another person willing to, or trying to find that in them. And I feel it making things better, even if it's on a very small scale, so it matters.
I just had like people watching on YouTube were like, is she okay over there? Because I'm like full body goosebumps, like, oh my gosh. That's what you said. Like, my energy has the ability to shift an entire room. Damn straight it does. And it did. And I witnessed that. But that is authenticity. That is the frequency of authenticity. If we were to literally see that on a vibrational scale, it's like, it's way up there. And so absolutely, that's not just a thing that you're saying. That's a thing you are actually doing. When you show up as you, this beautiful, unarmored, here I am version of you. And when you do that, you give other people permission, like, wow.
And that's the whole answer, right? Is
yes.
Like, I don't do it for me today from ego. Like we used to,
right.
Like you were talking about, ego used to need me to do it, to show up in a room, to get attention in a way that would feed my ego or my need for something. And today it is literally to give others the space to be the version of themselves, because other people did that for me. Like I said, I know so many times I can remember, even if it's not like a grand entrance in a room, it could be a simple conversation. But when somebody was just living in their authentic growth and spaces of like whatever, I got feedback that stuck with me and connected to something authentic in me, and that is what helped create the story that it's okay to do that for others, or it's important to do that for others.
Necessary to do that for others, because honestly, think about it, it's like we're all in this dark room and you come in and turn the light on. Everyone's like, whoa, I didn't even know this about me. I didn't know that I was capable of this. I didn't know that people do love.
Like I said, that one person saying like, you bring such a light, or you're such a light in this community. Like, I just never thought about it. And that sounds so ridiculous, right? Because I may have known that before I got sober. Again, I don't think I was all bad. I just think I was so buried in the old scripts and the shitty behavior and the need to feed my ego and selfish, all of that. So like, again, I think this version of me has always been within me, whether or not I was sober, but sobriety has given me the opportunity to continue to step into it more and more every day. And the opportunities that have come from that, again, whether that's the job, there's a second space that I do put a lot of energy and time into, is the gym community too, because just another one of those spaces where, somebody like myself, I've never been fit, I've never been an athlete, but like, holy crap, when I have other people that have pushed me to try to push my limits, and then I freaking hit another PR, or I get to accomplish something I never thought I could, it just changes the way I think about myself in a freaking, like, on a cellular level. Like, oh wait, but I could. Oh wait, but I can. Those things are huge. And so, yeah, just
again, because that immediately took me back to middle school. like you said, like I could have been in sports and I could have, but it was like, there wasn't that real push where anyone maybe at the time maybe didn't feel like they cared if I did these things or not, or if they saw something in me to be like, you should really do this. There wasn't that. And so to now have that and to know what that feels like, 100% that changes something in you. Cause you remember like, I was always worthy of being pushed. There was always something inside of me. And you can see like, it wasn't because they didn't think that you could do that. It's just their own stuff and being stuck in their own stuff to be able to really see you in that moment.
Circling back to some of that in that space and time too, come 12 years old or so, the depression is real. The ADHD that I had been dealing with without understanding what it was real. And to not be able to claim that or call it what it was or be supported in that. And they're like, here, let's put you on depression medication. And so try 6 of them over a matter of a few years. And, you know, suicide attempts were real and different things just, you know, it's like, man, could I have, and again, it wasn't for a lack of like my mom taking me to specialists and people who were trying. But again, when we didn't know how to access the right support, I finally at one point was able to be put on ADHD medication. And again, it was great because I felt more normal. And then I started abusing the medication. And so again, it's not like I ever have gotten enough time to come up and breathe and do like from a foundation that is buildable, right? My foundation has always felt so unbelievably rocky from a mental standpoint, especially, you know? And so.
And it was like, even from a physical standpoint, when you look the way you just described some of your childhood, like you said, the inconsistencies, there wasn't a lot of stability there, whether it was physically, but also emotionally. When someone is sick, like I hurt my toe and I was like a emotional roller coaster. So like to be chronically sick for a year, you're not emotionally stable. You're not emotionally regulating. So then you're not able to provide that for you, your kids. And that's why I have gone on this massive quest to be able to find that within myself, because I could see how important it was that I provide that for my kids, because when they're losing their shit, that's on me. I can't expect them to emotionally regulate when I don't know how to do it myself. And they can't feel safe sharing what they're thinking and feeling, or if they're depressed with me, if they don't feel like they can come to me because I'm going to blow up or I'm going to get sad or I'm going to whatever. And so you don't have that safe foundation. You're right. Like, it's like no one's seeing you in that experience.
Well, right. And again, if me expressing myself inherently makes my mom or dad or whoever else my support system is like feel worse.
Right.
Then again, I don't need you to fix it. I don't know that you can fix it. I just need to be seen sometimes, right? Like I just need space to be seen so I can start to navigate through it and just get it off of my own chest. And that space really wasn't there because we couldn't talk about it. And so again, the other thing I didn't really get into yet was, you know, 97, 98. So I'm just right before 10 years old. My mom's chronic kidney disease was layering up and getting bad before she found out she had diabetes. And I don't know if it's okay to plug other shows, but like, again, Dope Sick is based on it. Anyways, long story short, my mom was put on OxyContin. And again, it was something I didn't realize at the time what it was, but I could just feel like shit was wrong. It was so wrong. It was an instant fix, right? And so things got better for a little bit of time and she got remarried and, you know, whatever. But then they kept upping doses of these narcotics and everybody around us started getting put on them. And then we started getting robbed because people wanted these medications that have a street value of whatever. And then so to watch how that changed the infrastructure of my life, right? I had my aunt, my uncle, my mother, our family friends, like all of these people in like a year or two span was put on this medication that changed like holistically who they are, because now they are dependent. Even though we're acting like this isn't an addictive drug, we're just going to keep pumping more. My uncle started going to the methadone clinics to get it. Like it became it was just such an uncomfortable and volatile way to live. And that was from, like I said, the time I was 7 or 8 until
Oh my
you know,
goodness.
the time my mom passed away when I was 25. And so it was interesting. And I brought up Dope Sick because I felt like I was being gaslit my whole life about what this really was when I was talking to doctors,
Yes.
when I was talking to people. And then I
Oh,
watched that freaking Hulu series, and I have never felt so validated for what it really was. Yeah. So, I mean, that's a lot of work I'm still sitting with, right? Because, like, again,
mm,
that back to that anger. And now, do I now move it from my mom being sick to this damn pharmaceutical, whatever, right? I can go on tangents there, but what's the healthy way to handle this is
right.
where I'm at today. But the long story short of it is like that changed my life. And then I watched the friends of mine who were doing cocaine start to do Oxycontin and then turn to heroin and then start dying. And so I've lost countless friends and people that I
Mm,
loved, whether they are still alive or are passed away from overdose, to the disease of addiction, and to have it be so manufactured by doctors who are supposed to be trusted, and an industry that it's just tough. It's such a and then now I work in recovery, which is, again, we utilize that like it is tools. So it's
right.
working through a lot.
Oh yeah. I'm sure that absolutely triggers parts of you. And
You know?
thank goodness you recognize that. How do I separate my stuff and story and my healing around how this is being used now? Or, I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, that's absolutely going to trigger some things for you. And I think about all the ways that when you think about abandonment, and all of the examples of all the ways that got validated throughout your life, whether that was your mom being sick or when losing those friends, starting to take this drug and now seeing other people, and like how much substances not only felt like abandonment from other people that you lost, whether it was just their personalities changed and who they were versus actually losing them, but how it also, like how you lost you. Right. And that's really the big, gigantic lesson in all of this is how do you not abandon you anymore?
Right.
And that's where now you have been able to find who Katie is actually underneath all of this. And that's the beautiful journey through all of it. And that's the part that, ego is scared of the most, of being who you are. Because what if people abandon you? Like, no, 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 no. Like, right? That's this whole like.
All right. And now I just got to tether to like, it's okay if they leave, right? Like they will come and go, and the right people will stay, and the right things will happen. And I mean, God, the biggest fear of moving across the country, right? Like, what does that mean? I finally have these people that I love and that love me. And
Yeah.
I'll tell you, they're still right there. I get to fly back and officiate a wedding. And they're still the people that ground me to this day. And I'm so grateful for that. And now I get to create new connections and do more. So yeah, like I said, it's just the best tether to know what it feels like to be myself and to do that. And yeah.
Well, and it's interesting you say that. I always find this hilarious when I post things in my stories. Like last night, I found this. It was a John Cena video. He's got this look on his face, and it says something: when you realize you've heard, how many sets do you have left more than you've heard I love you? And I was like, I started laughing at first. I'm like, that's hilarious because that's accurate, and that was my thing. I'm like, but I'm okay with that because I know what I'm waiting for. It's worth the wait and all these things. And I have to admit, as the night went on, I sat with that a little bit more, and the sadness kind of crept in. I think I laughed about it as like a trauma response, and then, but this morning when I woke up, I thought about it. I was like, that's not actually true. I hear I love you from my kids all the time. I hear I love you from my friends, my close friends. That wasn't something I always did with close friends. You only said it to your parents. So to be able to have close friends when we hang up, say, I love you, or when you're giving them a hug goodbye after a coffee date. But then I thought like, no, I was actually okay with that because I love me now. And when you talk about being anchored, and when you can start to be okay with people leaving your life, it's because you are anchored in who you are and that you love you now. You are not going to abandon you anymore. And that's your inner child. Like, as long as I got you, people can come and go. Now I can see them as lessons or blessings or whatever. But as long as I got Big Katie, Big T, it's okay. And you can start to see it for what it really is, and that it's actually not rejection. It's not abandonment. It's that people are meant to come in and out of our lives in different seasons of our lives. But when you haven't done that healing work and you haven't been rooted in loving yourself, oh shit, that'll trigger those deep childhood wounds. So that's just a testament to your level of healing that I was able to up and move to Texas because somewhere in me, like I loved myself enough to know and trust that these new connections would come in my life when I was ready.
Well, and again, it's easy to say to trust, right? But I haven't been in a relationship in like 8 years. And again, very intentionally single for the last 5 at least. I'm just starting to date again, all of that.
We should start a podcast just on that.
It would be funny.
We can start our own segment of like when you've healed your childhood wounds, like how you enter back into
literally, it's insane actually. But I think to the point of, it took a lot of looking at the things that I did. Again, the ways I was hurt, the ways I hurt others by far ate me up too. And I wasn't a good partner. I wasn't a good friend. It just, there's so much that really needed to be cleared and apologize and amends made for wherever possible, right? But those little, and man, the ones that I can't make are probably the ones that ate me up the most, right? Whether that's the people that have passed away or the people that it's just not for me to do, right? I missed my opportunity and that's on me to live with now. So how do I live with the fact that I really did hurt people and move forward without letting that make me bitter or angry or sad or hate myself, whatever? Because I think that's a root of so much of the self-sabotage, and so just had to start releasing that anger, but it had to start with doing esteemable acts, right? For my self-esteem to be built, I needed to do esteemable things. And it seems so duh and simple, but I really couldn't heal from any of it until I really owned some of it. And that's still been a working journey in being able to do that and own how my actions did affect others. And then now I get to make these living amends by just living as somebody. Because again, an amend isn't just I'm sorry, right? Like it's not just I'm sorry, it's change behavior.
Yes.
So now that I'm aware, I have to change the behavior and not do that more. I don't want to continue to create harm to myself or others, And
right.
it's just such a mission today to be somebody that is not creating this list of people to say I'm sorry to or to have to fucking apologize for my behavior anymore. Like, get to be somebody that lives in integrity and it just was not always like that.
And I was like, I was channeling you on the podcast I recorded earlier about if they wanted to, they would. And I was like, no. And what a perfect example of that. Because when you look at if I wanted to, I couldn't in those moments when I was in the thick of my addiction.
And in the chaos and in the hurt. Again, my anger and hurt and inability to heal myself.
Yes.
I bled all over people that did not cut me. I bled all over people that did not cut me. I was unfair and two-faced and cheated and was rude and angry. And I made my mom feel 2 inches tall. And I think that to some degree, daughters and mothers, there's some of that, right? But my mom didn't ask to be sick. And who the hell was I at 10, 12, 14 being like, this is how you need to take care of yourself. It's easy to say. And so it just sucks. I know that I did the best I knew how to do with the tools I had. And like, that's good today, but I think the place where I get a lot of relief is I still have family members that I get to be present for and work with and do it different and remember what that lesson really is. It's not for me to know, meet them where they're at. I don't need to change people to be able to love them. I get to pick and choose where my energy goes.
100%. And you have the ability to really see people now because you allowed yourself to truly see you. You're able to see people in their own struggles, in their own journey, in their own trauma responses. You meet people with such a different level of compassion, but it took you having to do that for yourself to then be able to give that gift to other people. And now you can help people. Like, I don't want you to be in a position where you have to go back and make all of these amends. We can do this healing work so that way we're not in that position again.
Well, look, I'm gonna keep fucking up, but like I can also apologize on the spot when I do.
100%.
Right?
Like now I know how to own it right away. My ego doesn't swoop in and do 18 other thousand things
bury it and make it work.
Yes. Yes. And like now I can just say, you know what? I am sorry for what I said. I was triggered. I can own that. And that's where, again, just however people need to frame it so it resonates. Like I talk inner child, I talk ego as our protector. It helps me take ownership because I see it for me as like, we were joking on a group coaching call that people had named it, you know, mine was Betty. There was Brenda and some other names of what they called ego when she was really critical or whatever. It's like to almost be able to speak to that. Like, why did you say that? Why did you do that? Because we know what's right. We know what the right thing to do was. We know what felt intuitively in that moment, what we should have done, or that wasn't the right choice. But ego was like, why would you say that? Why would you hurt them? Or why wouldn't you go say sorry? You can almost have this conversation instead of it like dumping it on you where you're this terrible person.
Always inside, we've wanted it to be good. We didn't want it, right? This version of me that wanted good was always there.
Always there.
Watch me continue to make a mess of my life, right? And not know how to communicate and not know how to be. Yeah. And so that's also the biggest catalyst for why I have to give others grace, you know? Yes. People where they're at, right? Again, my relationships are still not perfect, but like I can still love somebody in spite of like, you know, certain things. And I can also have boundaries. And I think there was something that you said too.
You're talking about like you can have unconditional love for people when you can see them as this whole person who's hurting, but that doesn't necessarily mean unconditional tolerance because you mentioned boundaries. And we need that same thing for ourselves too, right? I can have unconditional love for whatever you're going through, but I also am not going to allow myself to be treated this way anymore. I'm worthy of being treated better because we want boundaries. That's to keep people in our lives, not to keep them out.
Well, that's just it, is I think that boundaries sound like ultimatum to some people that don't know what healthy boundaries are. And I think the beauty that I've seen in having healthy boundaries and self-respect, because again, the boundaries are self-respect, right? Like, again, like if I have them, it's because I love myself enough to know what I'm able to deal with or not deal with and whatever, but that elevates the relationship in a way, you know? And for me in the past, it was always like, I don't want to say no, or I don't want to set a boundary because again, abandonment, I don't want you to leave. I don't want you to be mad at me. I don't want you to pull away and stop loving me because I told you how I really feel. I don't want to lose you, so I won't get stern or clear. But the relationships that I have today really do work in a space where if I am able to call something out or speak to something that I need or that I would like, and they meet me there, we're both better off for that. The relationship is better off, but we are pushing each other to grow. And so in those spaces, it is so powerful to be able to connect with people in a way that's like, look, I could so many examples right now of this still happening in my life. It's interesting because maybe some people learned this early on in life and like, I don't know. And I think at some points I'm like, well, everybody already knows this, so I feel so behind, whatever. But it's new enough to me that it's exciting to me to believe that I can have meaningful relationships that continue to push me to be better, and that I can also be somebody that does that for somebody else. You know, it's
never too late. And it's interesting when you talk about being behind, because I have often felt that too. Like there's just this like sense of, I don't want to call it like immaturity, but I was just like, just how other people perceive things or with their career or whatever. Now I understand it, because while a lot of, again, when you think about the times in your story that you have talked about when you were 5, or, you know, when you're a baby, when you're 5 years old, when you're 8 years old, that's when a lot of that foundational work is being laid for most kids. You were in survival mode. It wasn't like, let's learn and thrive and develop. That's not where you were at. That's not where I was at. It was learn how to manage the room, worry about everyone else's emotions and their energy and what can I do like that. You weren't even present in your own moments to be able to do that kind of foundational work. And so everyone's childhood story is different. But when you really look at some of those foundational years, and that's where some of my siblings' stories can be very different because the experiences may have been very different from year.
Me and my sister see the same growing up situation 100% different. And like, as somebody who had two stepdads, and when I think of my childhood and growing up and the way that I loved each of them and the way that they loved me, there was so much good. So it's not to like take anything away from that, but I had two alcoholic or addicted father figures in my life who were short-tempered, and it just wasn't always good. And again, that's like, I could go on a whole podcast around some of that, but it just when it teaches you to walk on eggshells and tiptoe through life and try to fix other people's stuff, I'm not really worried about fixing me. And so trying to fix, manage, and control life around me started so young because it was necessary. And so again, whether that's survival protecting me or whatever, like it just
100%
it was the ways that it became important. And so then when I found boyfriends and friends and people who needed me, then that was my purpose, right? And so then when I started to be like, but I want better and I want to be around healthy people, then I try to date somebody who's healthy and more healthier, and I'm like, well, what's my purpose here? I don't have a purpose. This doesn't make sense. You don't love me because I can't fix you. Then you're trying to fix me because there's the dynamics, the insanity to
honestly, it feels that way. Yeah, for real. Oh my goodness. But yeah, that's where I hope people can give themselves some grace, and that you get every right to be excited about this new level of emotional stability within yourself and this new excitement that you can have these kind of connections and relationships in your life. Absolutely get excited about that. I'm stoked about the people that come into my life that I can speak this language to, that understand this. And I just don't resonate with people that don't anymore.
Can we be real about how fucking lonely it is too? Because
let's be real. That's real.
It's so hard to come to a space where I have some of these relationships. I don't know how I stumbled upon them, and I have faith that like they came right when they were supposed to, but now how to continue that momentum and do more of that, because again, I've never had boundaries. So God, it seems impossible to find people that, it's like, am I being overly critical? I don't know. Is this healing journey just supposed to be this freaking lonely? Because it is. It's so hard. It's so hard.
But I also think that's part of it, is that we have to go within. We have to learn how to love ourselves through the discomfort, through the loneliness, and know that as long as, like, again, our inner child has us, or that we're connected to something outside of ourselves bigger than us, if we can anchor into that, then the stuff outside of us starts to flourish. But until we have it, I think that's the whole point, is that it all gets stripped away. I need you to love you. I need you to feel worthy of you. I need you to validate you. So if you have all these other people around you, it's too easy to go back to old habits and patterns of searching for that outside of yourself. So I'm going to strip it all away. And you're not going to have a choice, because your purpose is big and we don't got time to waste. So you're going to sit in this loneliness until you figure it out.
Well, and it's like, when I think about it, even after I just said that, I'm like, well, I've been lonely inside of other relationships or surrounded by people too,
And that's worse.
Yeah. Well, and that's why it really is a beautiful thing to be able to connect in real ways and to lean into that too. And obviously that's the direction, right? That's what's worth it. The high I get from like genuine connection today is like nothing I've ever gotten from any of the drugs or drinking or whatever. The genuine laughter and connection, there's nothing like it. So I know that, but as the addict in me just wants more.
Right.
And just the extremes. Like, I need all or nothing, like all full send, like give me more of that all day. But again, I think that was why I've been humbled in this move. I was like, this is how it's going to look. This is what it's going to feel like. And humble pie served very early on that I stayed really busy doing meaningful things before I moved. And now I'm here. And some of the most important things that I'm doing is getting present and being with myself because I have not in life ever created the space to do that. So
Same.
it's been really good. And yeah, we'll see. We'll see what comes of it, right? What's next?
Right. Well, and it's interesting as you say that. It makes me think when I moved into this apartment, it's actually 2 years ago this week. That was the first time I've ever lived by myself. And at first
Same.
I thought it was like terrifying, but it was the first time I felt calm and peaceful because I only had to worry about my energy for once. I wasn't worrying about someone else's and trying to navigate it and shift my mood because of other people's. And it was just like, so even when my kids are here, I feel a little bit more like managing theirs, right? I'm much better at that now. But when I'm just here, it's like this is what that calm baseline feels like because I have never experienced that in my life. So this was the first time. This is the baseline, not this rocky eggshell tiptoeing thing that felt like my baseline for all my life. And where you started to feel like if it wasn't chaotic, it wasn't normal. And then once things became normal, things became good, we found a way to fuck it up. So we have chaos back in our life because that felt normal. Whereas now it's like retraining myself, like, no, this is this calm, this grounded space, this present space. This is actually what that should feel like. And so it's trying to get used to that, but that takes time, right? Because it's so easy to get pulled back into what felt normal before.
Yeah, I talk to friends and again, work with therapists and sponsors and blah, all of that. Again, I think a lot of it in the last year or two has been, why are you so uncomfortable with serenity? Why is it that you just can't allow joy and peace, peaceful moments? Well, because I've never known how to do that. I don't know.
For some reason, that feels more uncomfortable than the other stuff, right? It seems so messed up, but it makes total sense when you actually really look at it closely, know your full story. Of course, this feels uncomfortable and weird. We don't know what it's like to just be, to be present, to be calm, to be loved. Like, damn. Yeah. So that takes some time. And so, yeah, it's a lonely period while you're doing it, but thank goodness you're doing it.
Well, and honestly, again, it's as lonely as I let it be too, right? Like I said, I have those genuine connections, and I think that's the space I'm in now, is continuing to try to just push that bar on how I am reaching out. I went inpatient to get sober. I went inpatient for 30 days, and in some of those little group circles, it's some of the first times I'm learning what vulnerability looks like or feels like, and it's modeled for me and taught to me, and I didn't realize then that I was learning it, right? But now when I pick up the phone, don't just say it's okay if it's not, like if I'm lonely, pick up the phone. If I'm feeling lonely, journal a little, like connect. You can connect with yourself, with the higher power, whatever it is that you need connection. Golly, there's so much there. And I'm so grateful to have, like I said, so many channels and outlets that I can go to that are aligned and far more pure than anything that I would have done in the past, right? But is it better to call up somebody again? Just the bad old habits.
Yeah, I mean, it's about being intentional, right? Because we always have two choices and two paths. And it's working against, it seems like, well, this is the obvious choice and the obvious path. But when ego has trained you your whole life that this is the one and this is the path and this is safer, all the knowing, again, like
comfort. Yeah. I heard in a meeting once that like God will do for you what you can't do for yourself, but he's not going to do for you what you can. And I'm like, oh, that's annoying. Damn it.
That's annoying.
That's just annoying. What do you mean? That means I need to take action.
Yeah. I had this conversation with my son in a different context about like co-creating. He wants to be in the NFL. He's 6 years old. He practices every day. He's practicing drills. He wants me to throw. He wants to tag. Like for real, this kid is like legit. I honestly, like, I'm not just saying it to like fluff his boat or whatever. Fluff boat. I don't think that's the thing. It's feathers. I don't know. But I said, I'm like, you know what I love about what you do? It was 11:11. I said, Arlo, it's 11:11, make a wish. So he closes his eye and he goes, you know what my wish is? And I was like, to be in the NFL someday. And he's like, yeah. I'm like, you know what I love about that, Arlo? You don't just wish it. You actually practice and you put in the work and you are intentional. That's how you co-create. You say, this is what I want, but I'm also going to take the steps and do the things to meet you halfway. And so, yeah.
And the fact that we're in spaces where at 6 years old, he's hearing things like that. It gives me so much hope.
Yeah.
And
it can also bring up a sadness, right? Because you didn't have that.
Oh, absolutely. I have so much resentment for some of that, and I'm learning how to work through that. I've worked through so much resentment, and it's still, again, I think life just lifes, like, again, I lost my mom. There's times where it's like, God, anybody that still has their mom pisses me off, and it's not anybody's fault. I'm just sad. But
yourself to be sad, right? And not dismissing it anymore. No, that's real. And I can be sad about that. I get to feel all the feelings around this.
Yeah. And then, like I said, what am I going to do about it? Like, what actions can I take that feel, helpful in the situation?
Well, and that's such a beautiful inner child full circle moment, is because, like, what does little Katie need in that moment? If she's feeling sad about missing her mom, what does she need in that moment? How could I support her? If that little girl was sitting here and I saw that she was sad, what could I give her in this moment? How could I show up for her? Because if I just go back to a substance and numb and ignore, it's kind of like when my mom was sick all over again and didn't notice me. That little girl is sad and needs you just like you needed her. So it's like, whoa, I can see how this pattern is replaying if I'm not there and present and asking her, like, what do you need? Do you just need to feel sad? Do you need to sit here with me? Do you need me to metaphorically hug little version of me and cry with her? That might be all that she needs.
To be seen.
To be seen. To be seen. And that's why I love that you allowed yourself to be so fully seen at that wedding. From an inner child perspective, like little Katie was just back there like, look at her, look at us. I have like goosebumps right now, like almost gonna start crying. Because you don't know there's this inner child creeper in the audience, but I'm over there like knowing, like, I just can't turn it off. So I'm thinking in that moment of just how proud your inner child must be of you. And I thought the same thing for Colleen, and just look at you two beautiful women.
And well, again, the first thing they're like, do you want to be up front and center and like, and it's like,
would little Katie want to do that? What? Well, yeah, little Katie would. It was always this bold, fun, bubbly personality. Of course, little Katie would do that. And you made her so.
And she did it.
And she did it, and she nailed it.
Thank you.
Never get married again, you can officiate my wedding too.
I'm here for it. Like I said, it's never a for money thing. It was so matters of the heart. And
that's when you do your best work, right? It comes from your heart,
absolutely.
And I think someday if we all get paid for doing work that comes from our heart versus work, that just comes from our soul sucking jobs, like.
Right. Well, and again, if I can just find more spaces where that's even a thing, it's crazy what opportunities do arise. And like I said, I didn't look for any of the things I'm doing now. They just happened when I was in line with what I was meant to be doing. I was
100%.
doing things that made sense. And again, it just keeps on. More and more is revealed every day. Like, more will be revealed. And so again, my worries about how it's all going to work out have never really been substantiated. It's just never been helpful to sit and spend all that time and energy, because that doesn't stop or change how it's actually going to end up going.
Right. Well, and it goes back to the restaurant analogy of, you say what you want, like, I want to do more purpose work or whatever. You tell the waitress that, they take it back. Like, you don't know how they're cooking it up back there. You just trust that when it comes back is what you want. And hopefully you're like, damn, that was good. Even better than you imagined. If we can be in that energy about something and not have to worry about, you're not going back in the kitchen and watching how they're making it and telling them what to do and trying to control every aspect of it. we just trust that whoever's back there is skilled and know what they're doing. I mean, I think we would think the same thing of the God of the universe, right? Like, I hope you know what you're doing up there, because down here it looks a little sketchy. You got me going down some paths and things. Like, well, you got some lessons to learn, girl. So
no, it's so funny
exactly
too.
what you
Like
need.
I was just talking to my niece about that. I think there's like a picture or a meme or whatever, and it's like God holding this little bear in front of him and like the big one behind, and like the kid is looking at him like, God, I just wanted the bear. I loved him so much. But like, you don't know what's coming. You just don't. And
Right.
so what is the point in trying? I just need to take the action that I need to take to be in alignment with what is right for me. And those things have continued to just show up. But like you said, it requires the authenticity and the alignment and the armoring off. And but it's crazy. I can know all these things and still I continue to like move forward and live. And as it's one thing in familiar spaces, but every new phase of life or attempt, like again, the dating, for example, or whatever it is, like it's like, well, it's a new space. And so all of those old habits are still right there. It's like they've never gone.
For real. I swear I did this work already. Like, how is this showing back up? It should be like you get to hit once you reach a certain spot, like, no, there's no going back. You reached this, I've healed this. And it's just another freaking level of it.
A new job or a new whatever, like all those insecurities. And again, I'm just so grateful. You know, at my job, they talk a lot about positive psychology and recognizing your strengths and really being able to be grounded in the strengths that I do have and know what I'm skilled in and who I am has just helped maneuver through whatever's thrown at me and be more adaptable because I'm capable of recentering to that and then understanding where I need to ask for help, you know, and knowing what I need to ask for and not being ashamed of it or feeling like that imposter syndrome, like I shouldn't be here just because I don't know these things. Like, no, I know what I bring to the table today. I am great with collaboration. I can work with anybody. I'm expressive and these things I'm good at, you know. Some of the summarizing and clear communication is where I could learn a little. So.
That also makes sense, right? Is because you could have been clear communicator as a kid, but when you learn how to filter it and say what you needed to say, that still comes default, right? It's like my people pleaser still wants to say this when I'm like, no. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But what I love is like you get anchored in who you are and what you know you bring to the table. And so it allows you to ask questions when you don't know or to ask for help because you're anchored in who you are and what
helps me know that meaning and the purpose, like opportunities when they arise, right? It's not as hard to question, like, is this for me or is this not for me? Because of knowing who I am, like this feels purposeful and aligned with what I'm trying to do or who I'm trying to be, or it doesn't, you know? So it helps. It helps a lot.
Yes, absolutely. So before I know, I want to like wrap up on this question because it feels like this could be a whole other podcast.
I'm here for a second.
Yeah, because we never really talked about what it was that became the turning point for you 5 years ago to be like, you know what, I need to go on this path and get sober.
So, I think, how much time do we have? I alluded to, that teenage version of myself. Like I came into my teenage years very angry and then found a bunch of good people, but it was a lot of the broken people that I knew that I just gravitated towards. My first boyfriend's mom passed away when I was 12 from like speedballing. So it was, you know, again, an accidental overdose. And that was my first, the loss of some, it's hard because when she died, it was tough because it also like made me look at my mom's risky behavior and her part in what might happen to me. And so there was just this part of me that was drawn into these people, but also I want to help heal people. So my friend and boyfriend, they were brothers, but like lost their mom. And again, I tried to dive into that and support how I could. Then again, so like drugs and alcohol were around, it was a thing. And like I said, it started so young and was just so normalized. I started doing cocaine very young, probably closer to 15 or so. Um, and it was something I always hated too. It was so crazy because it was not anything that I remember being like, ew, weed, cigarette. I just never wanted to do anything regularly. But when I started doing cocaine, like I don't know that it was like an instant like aha, I love this, but I just felt more normal when I was doing it. And so it was interesting because I was also in that time frame when the doctors are trying to put me on Prozac and Lexapro and blah blah whatever. I had been through a suicidal episode and nothing was working or made me feel normal. Instead, things made me feel suicidal, made me feel numb, made me feel nothing, made me feel too much, like everything I had been going through. And so I finally got off all the meds and then I started doing cocaine, and then at some point down the road from that, I got prescribed Adderall, which is essentially methamphetamine. It's like a synthetic version. And that was something that allowed me to, again, like it really did help to some degree at school. And when I was using it appropriately, but I did not. When I say I was doing cocaine, I was doing it at school Monday through Friday during the school day. This wasn't just a casual Friday night usage either. It was, and then that becomes a expensive habit. So that now I'm selling it and I'm being the person who was able to get people what they needed was super helpful. I also had some surgeries and pain pills weren't really my thing. And so I sold a lot of my pain pills. And so again, I dabbled in a little bit of everything, but again, like the cocaine and then the Adderall were things that kind of stuck for a while till I started to see how the world of the cocaine, the things that people were cutting cocaine with, it felt really, really gross after a while to start understanding what I was doing to myself and how I was acting. And so at some point I was able to just kind of stop, but that was while I was on a prescription of Adderall. And so drinking an Adderall and smoking a lot of weed kind of became the things in a different phase of life. And so again, I think that as I entered the last few years of my drinking and using, I was always an all or nothing. When I look back at my energy from being younger, like I'm always full send. When we went out, it was shots. I had babysitters, my poor boyfriends who put up with me in the moments where I was just a mess, or best friends. But then the other beauty of Adderall is that when you're drinking, and you're on Adderall, you can drink more. It doesn't affect you the same. It literally cancels out some of your drunk. And I just really enjoyed the social aspect of let's do shots. My dad owned a bar. I was able to get out and do these things. And so it was just always extreme. Again, being able to keep up with my weed consumption because I was always the uppers and downers and uppers and downers and the balancing things out. I wasn't able to financially make sense of any of that. Responsibly for any length of time, right? Like there were just periods where it worked and then others where it didn't. And I'm just trying to kind of think of like catalyst moments. My mom passed away a few days before my graduation for my associate's degree. My mom had been sick and in and out of the hospital, like we said, for so long. And when I got the call and I was told that she was in the hospital, there was just not really a whole lot of me that thought that she was going to pass away. It was like another stroke. Like in my life, my mom had strokes and I woke up and went to school or like to go to school and she was on the floor in the kitchen, right? Like there's multiple times where we just moved through it. It was just a part of the way that we lived. So I didn't anticipate it to be what it was. So I didn't take it as seriously. I remember some of the first calls I made, I was like, she's going to miss my fucking graduation. Like I just didn't grasp the idea that she's about to be gone. Had I looked back anyways, I also really had from the friends who had passed away, it was just like PTSD of sorts when it comes to like, I will just never forget the first friend of mine, the phone call that I got, right? On when they passed. Like, it just isn't something I really ever sat with well or figured out how to like be present in. And I don't know that you're supposed to. And like I said, whatever. But today I can recognize that getting those phone calls are just moments that I didn't necessarily handle well. And so when I think of my mom's situation at 25, when I got the phone call that she was in the hospital, she was in Florida. So I had to go and fly down to I'm the oldest, I'm next of kin. So it was up to me to pull her off a ventilator. And so I had to fly down, but I didn't know. I was getting all these calls. My aunt was down there. They're saying, it's pointless. We got to take her off. They're basically telling me I had to do it from Wisconsin. And I'm like, fucking give me 24 hours. I'll be there, or less than that, whatever. The plane tickets had already been purchased, but basically they made the decision and helped me make the decision that I should take her off the ventilator while I was in the air. So like we were in Chicago O'Hare Airport and I got the message that she passed away as we're trying to get down to see her. And I was just so shocked and angry and I didn't handle it well. But at the end of the day, like right after that, for some reason, like firstborn child syndrome kicked in or whatever it is, right? It's like, all right, I got shit to do. It was like, get the death certificates, handle this, schedule the celebration of life. Let's do these things. It took on so much that I had never even began to know how to handle. But like, again, that's only something that'll ever happen once in your life. And so I don't think you're ever supposed to know that. But again, thank God for the people that were right there next to me. I just couldn't even express. So again, I think that first year after she died, I just took on like, do what you got to do mode. I even continued on with my schooling as planned. I enrolled in UW Whitewater and I went to school, and that semester was just, I was so disconnected. It's almost laughable that I would have even tried to continue moving forward. I just didn't know what else to do. So I dropped out of school. I had another suicide attempt and was hospitalized for the weekend, but they're basically like, well, again, if you're not suicidal anymore, good luck, go take some meds and get better. And I think from there, when I was like, I don't have a path with mental health help, I don't have a path, like, again, and I was asking for it. I'm like, give me a doctor, help me journal. What the fuck do I do? Right? Like, I'm devastated. 25 and feeling that little Katie just doesn't know. Like, I just want my mom, my sister, and it just, there's, layers to that too. What's my role? We weren't necessarily in the greatest of spaces anyways, because I was an asshole back then. And so again, it just, like, I want to be stand up and somebody I'm proud of in this situation. But either way, so there was just so much around being rejected for help that I didn't know where to go to get. And I was finally asking for it. And and I was probably, it's sad, but like I was probably in the healthiest relationship I had ever been in at the moment in time. And like I had a very supportive partner, but I did not have the tools to ask for help, know how to help myself in real ways. Like I said, those doctors were just like, well, schedule something. I didn't have insurance. So then it was like, okay, I guess whatever, we'll figure it out. So smoke a lot of weed. It was drink. And when you drink, be a fucking asshole. And like I said, I had babysitters. I had friends who loved me, thankfully, but also it was some level of enabling. And then I blew up that relationship that I was in. And, then I was living alone, right? And so again, even before blowing that up, like there was things that were happening that were not, and this is years, right? So like, again, my mom passes away. I think it was 2012, still in this relationship for the next 3 or 4 years, not living well. At some point, I was at a friend's house and she's like, would you like to do meth? I haven't done coke for almost 8 years at this point, but for some reason I was open to doing meth and I loved it. And it was fucking terrifying. And I went home while my significant other is still in the house. And I just like cleaned the garage for 12 hours or some shit. Like, I don't even know. It just, none of it made sense. But I was like, I felt human. And so at that point I was like, all right, I'm gonna, go get back on my Adderall because that scared me. And I didn't want to start using illicit substances because, like I said, the stuff on the street did make me really nervous. And even then, fentanyl wasn't what it is today, but it was beginning to start showing itself and killing people. And, I had some level of awareness to that. And so I go get on the Adderall and just keep masking everything that had been, from years prior to, especially, like I said, that catalyst of my mom's stuff. Right before that, the house I grew up in, I'm super lucky. I grew up in one home, and the home got foreclosed on before my mom passed away. And I ended up renting it. And then my sisters ended up renting it. And so again, it was something that we like saved within the family. But after she passed away, it just happened to be that we had to sell the house. And that just felt like a whole nother level of stability taken out from underneath me. And, all these things just felt like shaking the complete foundation that I fucking knew as stability, right? Like the stability and grounding that I had was just like coming out from underneath me. And then again, like I said, I had so many parts and just completely like lighting the match and blowing it up, like screaming for help. But again, nobody knew what to do. So I think in, a relationship with a coworker who was in another relationship and, like doing whatever I wanted. And I was drinking and driving one night, and I had a really scary situation where I had like ran into a cement barricade and some other things and kind of got into this chase with trying to get away. And I just remember my head like dang near went through the windshield, and I ended up running and hiding my car and parked it. And then I called an Uber, and the Uber took me to go pick up the pizza that I ordered because I was still aware enough that like I ordered a pizza and I'm trying to get to my, like just the ways that my mind worked. Like so I went and picked up my pizza, and I woke up the next morning with blood all over, bruises everywhere. I had a full steering wheel imprint in my chest, and my knees were so messed up. And again, blood from my head, and there's a pizza unopened on my lap. And I'm like, what happened? I apparently called a friend of mine, and she showed up at my house and was like, you ready for rehab? We have a bed waiting for you. And God bless my family. My aunt, who loved me so much, was like, we're going to get through this. We love you and we'll figure it out. And again, my friend was just like, are you fucking crazy? Are you done yet? She had been trying. That night, I had probably 5 different people that could have given me a ride. I literally talked to this friend and was like, I'm fine. I got it. Like I'm rolling a blunt at that time, getting ready to smoke and drive and leave, and thought I was fine. And I was so far from fine. And I'm so lucky that I didn't hurt anybody else. And I'm so lucky that it wasn't worse, but it was just scary enough that I was willing to say yes. And it's crazy too, because that morning when she said that, she was like, we're going to go talk to your dad and we're going to get you on a plane. I didn't know anybody who had ever gotten sober. In Wisconsin, we just, I don't know. I didn't know that sober people existed. I didn't know there was another way until the year before that. A friend of ours had moved to Texas and gotten sober. And so she had a year sober and just about a year sober. She's the only person that I had seen do it. And I watched the light come back into her eyes and her be able to be a human. And again, even then, I just remember friends of ours were like, you think she's going to like never drink again? Like forever? She's done? I don't know. And so, we judged that and I didn't understand it. It's like, oh, just clean it up and then you'll be able to drink again. And I think that's the way a lot of people think. And shit, that's how I was too. So again, I don't judge or not understand that, but I'm just so grateful. Her mom and her son actually happened to be in Madison. Well, she was down in Texas, and she's the one that ended up securing a bed for me at the treatment center that we went to, or that she went to and was getting me into.
Wow.
But mom was hopping on a plane the next day. And so again, that friend of mine was like, we got a bed and you're getting on the plane with her mom, who was also sober, who had also gotten sober
Wow.
a few years before and had already gotten her son and her daughter sober. So just the way things worked out, I would have never gotten, I can't see that I would have ever gotten on that plane by myself. But when I had my friend's mom and her son, who was just like so sweet, like, hey, you're coming with us. I think he was like 4 or 5. I don't know. He was just so little. And they were so welcoming. And her mom was like, look, it's, have your drinks now. We'll get you clean once we get there. So, like, get your last one. And she was just so like, it's going to be scary, but we're here for you. And I just didn't understand. I lived so tit for tat at that point. Like, I was so, why would you do this for me? Like, who just like takes in a whole nother stranger? Like, they brought me into their house the night before I was able to get into the rehab. And then when I got out, they brought me again, fed me and loved me. And like, again, I was just so not used to the amount of love I received without, like, it just didn't make sense. And so now that I understand, like, other people did that for them and it saved them, and now I get to do that for other people. And so it's just nuts. It's nuts. So I don't know that when I left treatment, look, I didn't follow the rules, or not the rules. I didn't follow the suggestions of the therapist. They were like, stay in Texas, go to sober living. Instead, I moved right back into the house that I used to live at, went straight back to the job I lived at. I did everything that people told me not to do. And I made it so much harder on myself to the point that I was suicidal year one, right? Like, thank God I didn't start using again or drinking again, but I towed that line and made terrible decisions. Because I wasn't ready to start healing. The healing terrified me, like facing some of the things that I had done and who I was just freaking terrified me. And I'm just I'm so grateful that I was at least willing. It just took a little bit of willingness to trust that life could look different, because at that point, like I said, I just didn't believe there was really another way. And once I started to own that maybe there is, then I was able to believe in more or something different. And I still could have never believed in what it is today. And so I don't know, it's been a crazy journey.
Oh my goodness. I love this so much. And that little bit of like, this is what unconditional love feels like. Like, I don't even really know these people that well, and they can just love me because I'm me, and they would do this for me without anything in return. Like, because love felt conditional before, and that might have been one of your first examples of what unconditional love felt like. And to fully receive that, to where you were open, okay, what's next? This feels good. It's strange, but maybe this could lead to something even more, where you can now have unconditional love for yourself. Like, oh my gosh. I feel like,
well, then to practice it with others too. Like, I don't know.
Right. And now you're paying it forward in so many beautiful ways. Like, look at this beautiful full circle moment.
Well, and like when I got sober, I think there were so many people that if I could have chosen, right? These are the people I want to come with me. Like, I want you to get sober with, and like, it doesn't work like that. Like, it's everybody's time. And that was probably the hardest lesson to learn. But then to be able to, again, just the number of people that I've been able to help get, I don't know, right? So my niece ended up just celebrating 2 years sober, and I'm so freaking proud of her. And it's not like it's about me. It's not about me, but just to be able to walk that path with her, or again, other really close friends and family. It's not the people I would have assumed, but again, the value of what it does look like today, and just again being in the right place at the right time. Like, I don't get to question it. I just get to show up, and it's crazy.
Well, and it's just such a beautiful, wow, if I wouldn't have gone through all of that and lived this experience, the way I'm able to show up for people as me, like, no one is me, no one has lived my life, but the way it helps me show up for these other people, that was the gift in a very, very painful package. But you found the gift, and that the gift is just you. It's just you being you. Oh my goodness. We might have to do a part 2 on that at some point, because I feel like there's so much more that we could dive into. But thank you so much for sharing your story and your heart and your energy, because man, your energy it speaks for you, and you just bless people just by being who you are and shining that light. So please, 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 please keep shining your light, because I hope that this podcast inspires anyone else there to just trust that when you are you, like that is the gift, and how you can bless people just by turning on your own light and being who you are.
And it's electric, right? Like it's literally electric.
I cannot, people can't say that without me going into that song. It's electric.
Yeah.
Oh, but truly, thank you. Thank you so much. I feel blessed and honored to have witnessed you today, to have witnessed you on Colleen's wedding. So thank you. You gave me a gift today. So
thank you so much. It is wild how, like I said, just the timing, it all kind of plays out the way it's supposed to when it's supposed to. It is, like I said, I just don't know that I would have been open or ready or as in need of these types of conversations until right when you posted what you posted. And so the timing is perfect. And I'm so grateful to have met you as well. And I love what you're doing and putting out into the world. So thank you for what you do. And I'm looking forward to seeing what is to come for both of us this year.
Awesome. Well, next time you're in Madison, you let me know. And I may be coming to Texas. So I will be hitting
Bring
you
it
up when that
down.
happens.
Bring it on down.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. We will be in touch, and I can't wait for people to hear your story. So thank you again for shining your light. All right. Until next week. Bye, everybody.
Have a good one.